My friend, there is a mystery, an ancient mystery, one that stretches from the throne of heaven to the wilderness of your heart. You see, you were not created for mediocrity. You were not fashioned in the image of the Most High to merely survive. No, you were formed, chosen, and anointed for glory, but not the glory of man, no, the glory of God. And yet many walk through life unaware that the door to that glory has been standing open all along. In ancient Israel, the Holy of Holies, where the glory dwelled, was sealed off, veiled, untouchable. One man, once a year, and with blood could enter in. But that veil was torn, the barrier shattered, not by the hand of man, but by the hand of God himself. And when the veil was torn, it wasn't just an act of sacrifice. It was an invitation. The throne room was opened, access was granted, and yet many still live as though the veil remains. Why? Because they have not unlocked it. Not with a key made of metal, but with a key of faith, the key of surrender, the key of covenant. My friend, the glory is not far from you. It is not in the heavens that you must ascend, nor in the deep that you must descend. It is near you, it is within reach, but it must be unlocked. And how do you unlock your access to the glory? By turning from the world and to the spirit, turning from the temporal and to the eternal. You must walk away from Egypt to enter the promised land. You must leave the garments of the old life at the cross to be clothed in righteousness. You must ascend the mountain, even if it shakes, to hear the still small voice of God. Remember Moses. He saw a bush that burned and was not consumed, but it was only when he turned aside that God spoke. You must turn aside from the distractions, from the noise, from the gods of this age. For the glory will not reveal itself to the casual observer. It comes to the one who seeks, the one who knocks, the one who will not let go until the blessing comes. You say you are not worthy? Neither was Isaiah when he saw the glory. Woe is me, he cried, for I am undone. And yet a coal from the altar touched his lips, and he was made clean. The glory does not wait for perfection. It comes to the broken, the contrite, the surrendered. But beware, the glory is not tame. It does not come to validate your plans. It comes to transform them. It will break your pride. It will consume your idols. It will wreck your comfort, and it will resurrect your calling. You cannot step into the glory and remain the same. So arise, child of God. The ancient doors are open. The invitation stands. Do not stand at a distance when the glory is calling you near. Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy ground. The veil is torn, the throne is open, and the glory is waiting. Then why do so many remain outside? Why do so many who are called sons and daughters live like orphans in the wilderness, never tasting the fullness of what was bought for them by blood? Because though the veil has been torn, the world has woven new veils. Veils of fear, veils of compromise, veils of distraction. The enemy does not need to bar the way if he can simply blind the eyes. If he can make you forget who you are, you will never walk in the authority you were given. But hear me. You were not redeemed to live in the outer courts. You were not delivered from Egypt to die in the wilderness. The same voice that called Lazarus from the tomb is calling you now, calling you out of grave clothes, calling you into his presence, calling you into the glory. And the glory is not just a mist, not just a feeling, not just a moment of ecstasy and worship. The glory is the very manifestation of God. His weight, his essence, his power resting upon you. You say, but I don't feel it. My friend, the glory is not accessed by feeling. It is accessed by faith. Noah built the ark when there was no rain. Abraham journeyed when he did not know the destination. Faith does not wait for a sign. It becomes the sign. You step out and the waters part. You lift your eyes and the mountains move. You lift the empty vessels and the oil begins to flow. There is a pattern in the word, and it has not changed. When the priests carried the Ark of the Covenant into the Jordan, the waters did not part while they were still on the banks. No. It was only when the soles of their feet touched the water that the miracle was unleashed. The glory follows obedience. You must take the step. You must move toward the unknown. You must risk your comfort to lay hold of the sacred. And make no mistake, the glory is costly. It will cost you your pride. It will cost you your agenda. It will cost you your chains. Yes, your chains. Because many have grown comfortable in their bondage. They have decorated their prisons and called them palaces. But the glory is a fire. It comes not to decorate your captivity, but to break it open. Do you remember when Solomon dedicated the temple? The priests could not stand to minister because the glory of the Lord filled the house. That same glory, weighty, overwhelming, holy, is not confined to temples made with hands. Paul said, do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit? The glory that once filled the sanctuary of stone is now meant to fill you. But if you are the temple, then you must also be consecrated. You must be set apart. There is no room for compromise in the Holy of Holies. The modern church has sought to manufacture a substitute for the glory, a polished performance, a convenient faith, a sanitized gospel. But man's smoke machines can never replace the cloud of his presence. His glory will not come where he is treated as common. It comes where there is awe, where there is reverence, where hearts tremble before the majesty of the King. And what happens when you unlock your access? Everything changes. Your prayers become fire. Your words carry weight. You begin to move, not in reaction to the world, but in sync with heaven. You don't echo culture. You declare truth. You don't chase blessings. You carry them. You don't live for victory. You live from it. Because in the glory, you see him as he is. And when you see him, you can no longer remain as you were. And there is a reason Moses' face shone when he came down from the mountain. He had stood in the glory, had beheld the presence. And though the skin of his face radiated light, it was just a shadow, a glimpse of what is available to you now. For we, with unveiled faces, behold as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, and are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory. You are not meant to visit the glory. You are meant to be transformed by it, to go from glory to glory, faith to faith, strength to strength. But again, I ask, why do so many settle? Why do they build tents at the base of the mountain when the summit awaits? Because glory requires intimacy. And intimacy requires surrender. You cannot bring your idols into the throne room. You cannot enter with unforgiveness, with rebellion, with double-mindedness. The fire of his presence will expose it all. And that's what many fear. Not the absence of God, but the exposure of their own hearts in his light. Yet even this is mercy. For the glory does not come to destroy you. It comes to purify you. The coal touches your lips not to burn you, but to make you clean. The fire refines the gold. The light reveals so that you may be healed. Do not fear the exposure. Do not flee the refining. Run toward it. For those whom he loves, he disciplines. And those whom he disciplines, he glorifies. You were not born in this hour by accident. You were placed here by divine appointment. The prophets long to see the days you are living in, but to walk in this hour's anointing, you must enter this hour's glory. You must shake off the slumber. You must rend your heart, not your garments. You must seek him while he may be found, and call upon him while he is near. What you carry is holy. The treasure is in earthen vessels, yes, but it is still treasure. And it was not given to be hidden. The light was not lit to be placed under a basket. The glory in you is meant to flow through you, to heal, to restore, to declare liberty to the captives. The same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in you. Do you understand what that means? Resurrection power, miracle power, glory power. It is in you, not because of who you are, but because of who he is. But that power cannot be accessed casually. You must dwell, you must abide, you must remain. The secret place is not for tourists, it is for dwellers, for those who build their lives around his presence, not just visit on Sundays. You cannot microwave the glory. It does not come in a hurry. It comes when you wait, when you linger, when you press in, even when the feelings fade, when you say like Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. that cry desperate, unrelenting. That is the sound that opens the heavens. That is the key that unlocks access. The Lord is not withholding the glory from you. He is waiting for you to want it more than you want anything else. Not just his hand, but his face. Not just his gifts, but his presence. And when you unlock it, when you finally step beyond the veil, everything shifts. Your identity is restored. Your purpose is ignited. Your past is redeemed. Your future is set on fire. You walk not in fear, but in boldness. Not in striving, but in rest. Not in confusion, but in clarity. For the glory is not just power, it is presence. It is the assurance that he is with you, even in the fire, even in the storm, even in the valley. And the nations are waiting. Creation groans for the manifestation of the sons and daughters of God. Not those who simply profess him, but those who carry his glory. Not just in word, but in power. Not just in form, but in fire. The world does not need another sermon. It needs a demonstration. And that demonstration comes from those who have unlocked their access, who have dared to believe that what the word says is not only true, it is available. The glory is not a myth. It is not a relic. It is not a legend of past revivals. It is the inheritance of every believer who refuses to be satisfied with less than the fullness of God, who says, I was made for more, who stands in the ashes of disappointment and still declares, show me your glory. So rise, open the ancient doors, step through the torn veil, throw off every weight, lay down every idol, and enter. Enter not as a beggar, but as a son, not as a stranger, but as one who belongs. The king is waiting, the throne is open, the glory is here. And still the Spirit calls deeper, higher, further than you've ever gone before. Not to the familiar, not to the place where your feet have tread 1,000 times, but to the unknown depths of his presence. Because when the glory comes, it doesn't ask for your comfort. It doesn't request your schedule. It demands your life. All of it. And in return, it gives you everything you were ever created to become. There is a price for the presence. Not because God sells it, but because the weight of the glory cannot rest on what is unprepared. The ark could not be carried on a cart of convenience. It had to be carried on the shoulders of consecrated men. And still today, the glory must be carried. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot be borrowed. It must be carried by you, by those who have been set apart, not perfect, but surrendered. The ones who unlock their access are those who have learned the language of heaven. And it is not the language of pride or power. It is the language of hunger. Hunger that cannot be satisfied by applause. Hunger that will not be silenced by success. Hunger that drives you to your knees, that breaks you in the secret place, that says, I would rather dwell in the house of the Lord for one day than live 1,000 elsewhere. That kind of hunger moves the heart of God. That kind of hunger unlocks realms no program can reach, no theology can manufacture, no human wisdom can sustain. That hunger is the cry of revival. It is the sound that rises from dry bones, from barren wombs, from empty altars. It is the voice of the remnant crying, we will not settle. We will not move without your glory. And yet the glory cannot be contained. When it falls, it spills, it spreads, it transforms everything it touches. The barren become fruitful, the broken are restored, the dead are raised, because where the glory is, heaven invades earth. And the atmosphere shifts. Chains fall without a key. Darkness flees without a fight, because the glory does not argue. It overwhelms. Do you remember the upper room? They were all in one place in one accord, not scrolling, not distracted, not entertaining themselves while they waited, but praying, tarrying. And then suddenly the sound of a mighty rushing wind, and the glory came. Tongues of fire, power that turned cowards into apostles. Unlearned men into world changers. Why? Because the glory had come and they had been prepared to receive it. The glory will not come to the lukewarm. It will not rest where it is treated casually. The glory is holy. And when it comes, it marks you. It will not let you remain hidden in compromise. It will not allow you to blend in. It sets you apart. You become a burning one, strange to the world, misunderstood by the religious, but known in heaven. You cannot be passive and carry the glory. You must war for it. You must press in when everything in you wants to pull back. You must keep your lamp burning when others let theirs go out. The wise virgins had oil, and they were ready when the bridegroom came. The oil is intimacy. The oil is purity. The oil is the price you pay in the secret place. It cannot be bought at the last minute. It cannot be borrowed from another's devotion. You must get it for yourself. And when you do, when the weight of his presence rests on you, every room you enter is different. You don't need to announce yourself. The glory speaks for you. Demons recognize it. Angels are drawn to it. The earth responds to it. And it's not because of your name, but because of the name you carry, the name above every name, the one who dwells in unapproachable light and yet has chosen to make his home within you. You were created to host the glory, but a host must prepare the house. You cannot fill a vessel already overflowing with the world. You must be emptied, not of personality or identity, but of self, self-will, self-promotion, self-preservation. Only then can you be filled, pressed down, shaken together, running over with the glory of God. But beware, once you taste the glory, nothing else will satisfy. The entertainment of the world will seem hollow. The applause of man will feel shallow. You will become ruined for anything less than his presence. And that is a holy ruin, because it means you've seen the real, you've tasted the heavenly, you've touched the hem of his garment, and can never go back to ordinary again. That's why Paul said, I count all things loss for the surpassing worth of knowing Christ. Not just believing in him, knowing him, experiencing him, dwelling with him. That's glory. That's access. That's the life you were born for. But it is not for the half-hearted. It is for those who will go to the altar and not crawl off. Those who will say, not my will, but yours be done. And when that becomes your heart cry, the door swings open. You begin to walk in a realm where miracles are natural, where favor follows obedience, where strategy is born in prayer, where your shadow can heal the sick, not because of you, but because of the glory on you and in you. You see, this is not about hype. This is not emotionalism. This is about returning to the ancient path, the path of Enoch, who walked with God and was no more, the path of Elijah, who called down fire, the path of David, who danced before the ark with undignified abandon, the path of Jesus, who was the glory wrapped in flesh, and who said, the glory you gave me, I have given to them. To them. To you. To all who would believe and obey. The glory is your inheritance, but an inheritance must be claimed. It must be pursued. It must be honored. You cannot treat what is sacred as common and expect heaven to endorse it. So prepare the altar. Lay down your idols. Light the flame again. Return to the first love. Return to the place where his voice was enough. His presence was everything, and his will was your desire. That place still exists. That door is still open. But time is short, and the call is urgent, because this generation does not need another influencer. It needs carriers of the glory, not those who entertain, but those who encounter. Those who have stood in the fire and emerged as messengers of the flame. Those who live with heaven's agenda, speak heaven's words, and carry heaven's weight. And when that happens, when the people say yes to the glory, the earth cannot remain the same. Regions shift, strongholds break, revival erupts, because the glory is not passive, it is not quiet, it is not subtle, it is a holy invasion, and it begins with you. So let the fire fall, let the weight descend, let the glory come. Don't resist it. Don't fear it. Don't explain it away. Embrace it. Let it wreck you. Let it rebuild you. Let it send you. You were not born for the shallow end. You were not made for surface level faith. You were designed for the depths, for the holy, for the glorious, for the presence of the living God. The Spirit is still hovering, still waiting, still brooding over the waters of your life, ready to speak, "Let there be light," ready to pour out a glory you have not yet imagined. But he will not force it. He will not push past your indifference. He waits for the hungry, for the thirsty, for the desperate, for the one who says, "I must have more." So the invitation remains. The access has already been purchased. The veil has already been torn. The Spirit and the bride still say, "Come." Will you step beyond what is comfortable? Will you walk into the weight of his presence, even if it costs you everything? Because everything you lose in the pursuit of glory will be nothing compared to what you gain. The glory is calling, the fire is ready, the wind is blowing, the voice is speaking, and the time is now. And now, as the hour grows late in the Spirit, the urgency grows stronger. Not a fear-driven urgency, but one born of the Spirit's yearning for a people who will no longer delay, no longer circle the mountain of indecision, no longer flirt with the edge of surrender while holding tightly to the things they were never meant to carry. Because the glory doesn't just invite you into the presence, it demands that you leave something behind. And for every ounce of glory you carry, something of the flesh must die, not to harm you, but to make space for what's holy, space for what's eternal. You see, this is why some never step into their calling. It's not because they weren't chosen. It's not because they weren't gifted. It's because they held too tightly to what was safe. They loved the outer courts more than the fire. They feared the cost more than they desired the presence. But the Spirit does not pour himself into half-made altars. Fire falls where sacrifice is real. So let the altar be rebuilt. Tear down the stones of self-reliance, of man-pleasing, of lukewarm faith. Stack again the stones of obedience, of hunger, of holiness, and lay yourself down, not as a victim, but as an offering. Because the moment you give everything, you'll discover you never had anything to begin with apart from him. The moment you die to self is the moment you truly live. And the glory waits at that intersection where flesh ends and spirit begins. There's a reason the cloud led Israel by day and the fire by night. It wasn't just for direction, it was for dependency. Because the glory moves, it shifts. It doesn't stay in yesterday's revelation. It invites you forward. And to follow it, you must be willing to leave the familiar, to step into places where you've never been, to trust when you don't understand. And that's where many stop. They want a stationary God, a God they can visit like a monument. But the God of glory is not a monument. He's a movement, a fire, a wind, a river. And those who carry his presence must move with him. You cannot build a house around a moment and call it revival. Revival is not a service, it's a sustained visitation. And visitations only become habitations when the hearts of the people make room. Revival is not about more people in a building, it's about more of God in his people. And his glory doesn't fall because we plan it, it falls because we host it. Because we create space that says, you alone are welcome here. And when he comes, everything that is not of him must bow. Sin cannot stand in the glory. Pride cannot lift its head. Demons cannot speak. They flee not at your name, but at the weight you carry. And the weight you carry is directly connected to the time you spend in the secret place. Not public, not loud, not curated, but private, hidden, consumed with the one whose eyes are like fire and whose voice shakes the heavens. It is in that place that you are forged, that the weight of the glory begins to press in, not to crush you, but to shape you. The anointing may come in a moment, but the weight comes in the crushing. The glory comes through the pressing, through the hidden obedience, through the tears no one sees, through the prayers that seem unanswered. That's where the vessel is made. And when the vessel is ready, the oil flows. The glory falls. But remember, This isn't about you. It was never about you. The glory isn't for your platform, your promotion, or your applause. It's for His name, His fame, His purposes. If you try to touch the glory, you'll fall like Uzzah. If you try to merchandise it, it will lift. If you try to control it, it will break you. Because the glory is holy. It is not a tool to be used. It is a presence to be revered. That's why only the humble can carry it, because the weight will crush the proud. That's why the secret place is key, because in the hidden place He removes what cannot remain. He breaks what will betray. He heals what you didn't even know was broken. And when you rise from that place, you do not rise the same. You rise with authority. You rise with clarity. You rise with glory on your life. And you'll know when it's there, not by what you feel, but by what follows. You'll speak and hearts will burn. You'll pray and strongholds will crumble. You'll worship and heaven will respond, because where the glory rests, nothing remains untouched. Nothing stays the same. But this is not just for a few. This is not reserved for the prophets and the preachers. This is the inheritance of the sons and daughters. The veil was not torn for the elite. It was torn for the hungry, for the willing, for the ones who will say yes before they know the cost, who will obey before they see the result, who will walk by faith when the path is invisible. You don't need a title to carry the glory. You need a yes. You need a posture of surrender. You need a heart that trembles at His word. That's who He dwells with. That's who He rests upon. Not the influential, but the obedient. Not the flashy, but the faithful. So let the deep call to deep. Let your spirit cry out for what eyes have not seen and ears have not heard. Don't be content with the outer courts when the way to the Holy of Holies has been opened. Don't feast on crumbs when a table has been set before you in the presence of your enemies. Don't settle for visitation when you were made for have. But if you choose this path, if you choose to walk into the weight of glory, know that it will cost you everything. You may lose friends, you may lose favor in the eyes of man, you may walk alone, but you will not be alone. For the glory walks with you, the fire surrounds you, the Spirit within you will be enough. More than enough. And everywhere you go, atmospheres will change, not because you planned it, but because you carry it. Like Peter's shadow, your presence will echo heaven's reality, not because of your eloquence, but because of your closeness. Closeness to the one who is glory, to the one who sits on the throne, surrounded by seraphim crying, "Holy, holy, holy," to the one who was and is to come. And when you walk in that glory, your life becomes a testimony, not a story of your greatness, but of His. Not a monument to your effort, but a flame that says, God is here. Your words will pierce because they come from the secret place. Your prayers will shake things because they carry the weight of intimacy. Your worship will open heavens because it is birth in surrender. This is what creation is groaning for. Not performers, not professionals, presence bearers, glory carriers, sons and daughters who refuse to bow to Babylon, who refuse to be silent, who refuse to play church while the world burns. This is the hour. This is the call. The door is open. Will you walk through it? Will you leave behind what is temporary for what is eternal? Will you let go of what you think you are to become who you were always meant to be? Will you unlock your access? Because it has already been given. Not earned, not achieved, given by grace, by covenant, through blood. And now it waits. The cloud is moving. The fire is stirring. The wind is blowing again. And it's not waiting for the perfect, it's waiting for the willing. It's waiting for those who will kneel when no one's watching, those who will lift their hands when everything in the natural says to give up, those who will pray through the night, not for answers, but just to be near Him. It's waiting for the ones who are not distracted by the noise of this age, who have turned down the volume of the world to hear the still, small whisper of the Spirit calling, "Come higher." because the higher you go, the more narrow the path becomes. The glory does not rest on the broad road. It does not travel where everyone is going. It walks the narrow way, the costly way, and those who would walk in it must walk light, shedding the weight of sin, the clutter of carnality, the pride of life. There are things you can carry in the outer courts that you cannot carry into the inner place. Not because God is cruel, but because the weight of his presence would consume what is impure. The glory is holy, and those who would carry it must be marked by that holiness. This is why the enemy works so hard to distract, to deceive, to delay you, because he knows the truth. Once you realize who you are and what you've been given access to, he has no power over you. He cannot stand against a glory carrier. He trembles not at your volume, but at your alignment. When your heart is in alignment with heaven, when your life becomes a vessel prepared for the glory, every chain must break. Every lie must bow. Every assignment against you must dissolve in the presence of the Lord. And yet you must understand that carrying the glory will separate you. It will mark you. You'll become a sign and a wonder, not just because of the miracles, but because of the contrast. The world is growing darker, but those who carry the glory will shine brighter, not with human light, but with divine fire. The kind of fire that reveals, that heals, that convicts, that consumes. The kind of fire that is not content with half-hearted devotion. And so the Spirit is calling not for performers, but for priests. Not for stage lights, but for burning hearts. The priesthood of old offered sacrifices day after day, but the new covenant calls you to offer something greater. Yourself, a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable, not out of duty, but love. Not out of fear, but longing. And in that offering, the glory finds its resting place. Do not be deceived. The presence of God is not a vague emotion. It is not a cloud of sentimentality. It is power. It is fire. It is holiness. When the glory comes, you will not be able to remain standing. When the glory comes, your agenda will crumble, your pride will melt, and your heart will erupt in worship. Because the glory demands a response. And the only fitting response is surrender. But let me tell you something the world does not understand. The glory will cost you, yes, but it will fulfill you in ways nothing else can. You will be emptied, yes, but only so you can be filled with what is eternal. You will weep, yes, but your tears will water the soil of revival. You will be stretched, broken, poured out, but in that breaking, the fragrance of heaven will be released through your life. Like the alabaster jar, your life must be broken for the perfume to fill the room. And that fragrance, it draws people not to you, but to him. That's what the glory does. It removes the spotlight from man and places it where it belongs, on the King, the Lamb upon the throne, the one whose glory fills the temple, the one whose train is still filling the earth, the one whose blood made access possible and whose spirit now dwells in vessels of clay. The very thought that he would choose to dwell in us is staggering. That the God of all creation would make his home not just near us, but within us. That is glory. That is the mystery. That is the invitation. But an invitation requires a response. Will you respond? Because there are doors in the Spirit that only open when you knock. There are rooms in his presence you can only enter when you seek. There are dimensions of glory reserved for those who will press past the outer courts, past the routine, past the convenient, and into the holy. And once you taste it, you will never go back. You won't want shallow prayers anymore. You'll crave communion. You won't want trendy sermons. You'll hunger for revelation. You won't want temporary platforms. You'll long to stand before the throne because you've seen him. You've beheld the King in his beauty, and everything else fades in comparison. This is not an emotional rush. It's a divine encounter, a holy transformation. When Isaiah saw the Lord high and lifted up, he cried out, "Woe is me," because the glory reveals. It reveals not to shame, but to purify, to prepare, to commission. Because once Isaiah was purified, the voice of the Lord said, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And the man who moments earlier was undone now said, "Here am I, send me." That is what the glory does. It takes the unworthy and makes them worthy. It takes the broken and makes them bold. It takes the hesitant and makes them heralds. When the glory comes, it doesn't just change your feelings, it changes your future. It rewrites your story. It breaks the cycle. It silences the lies. It releases heaven into earth through yielded vessels. And that's what you are meant to be. A yielded vessel, not strong in your own power, but surrendered in His. That is the key. The glory doesn't rest on the qualified, it rests on the available, on the empty, on the ones who say, if you don't go with me, I won't go. On the ones who, like Moses, refuse to move without the presence. That is the cry of this hour. Not for bigger buildings or louder programs, not for better marketing or clever strategies. The cry of this hour is for glory, the manifest presence of God, the undeniable weight of heaven on earth. That's what changes lives. That's what delivers captives. That's what heals families. That's what brings prodigals home. And that glory has already been poured out. At Pentecost, in revivals past, in the wilderness, in the upper room, in hidden places, across the nations, and yet it is not finished. There is more. There is always more. The Spirit still moves. The fire still falls. The wind still blows. And the glory still waits for a generation who will lay down everything to carry it. You don't need to be known, you need to be found. Found in the secret place, found in the cleft of the rock, found under the shadow of His wings, found in the place where the veil is lifted and the voice is clear. That is where glory begins. And from that place, it flows like a river, bringing life wherever it goes. So don't stop short. Don't settle. Don't say this is enough. The moment you stop hungering is the moment you start dying. Stay hungry. Stay low. Stay in awe. Let the glory mark your life so deeply that people sense Him when they meet you, not because of what you say, but because of who you've been with. The same fire that burned in the bush for Moses is burning still. The same cloud that filled the temple is still moving. The same Spirit that raised Christ is still awakening hearts. The glory is not a thing of the past. It is now. It is present. It is here. It is near. And it is waiting. So now the moment stands before you, not a moment of emotion, but of decision. The invitation is not from man, but from the Spirit of the living God. The veil has been torn, the price has been paid, the way has been opened. The question is not whether access has been granted, but whether you will step through. This is not about inspiration. It's about impartation, not just hearing about the glory, but becoming a carrier of it, becoming the dwelling place, the altar, the flame. Your yes is not a whisper in the dark. It is a sound that shakes the heavens, that draws the fire, that welcomes the King of glory to come in. So rise up, beloved. Let your heart burn again. Let your soul awaken. Let the things of earth grow dim as the light of His glory fills your gaze. You were made for this. You were called for this. The glory is not distant. It is here. It is now. It is waiting for you.